South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has removed Andrew Whitfield from the Democratic Alliance as Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, ostensibly for his February trip to the White House, to America, to visit the Donald Trump administration. Now, it's critical to note and point out at the very onset that deputy ministers are not really part of cabinet. They do not take over the responsibilities of the minister if that minister is incapacitated or dies or whatever the case may be. So, in and of itself, this is not a major move, but more of a warning from President Cyril Ramaphosa to the Democratic Alliance. It's a gesture that he's serious about maintaining decorum, discipline, and that he's actually in charge and he's the boss, and that he has the authority to remove and shuffle people from the cabinet because that's his constitutional prerogative. He appoints the cabinet, he appoints deputy ministers, and I think he wanted to send a message to the Democratic Alliance that they must not forget that he's in charge. Well, John Steenhuisen, Helen Zille, the Democratic Alliance, they're not happy with this. They've issued an ultimatum to the president and given him 48 hours. And this is basically what John Steenhuisen, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, had to say. He was not happy about this development, and he used the podium of Parliament in the National Assembly during the Division of Revenue vote to actually articulate his party's concerns. This is what he had to say about everything.
House Chairperson, yesterday, South Africa's future was put at stake.
Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members.
Shortly before the cabinet meeting yesterday, the President informed me that he intended to remove Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield as a Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition. I requested 24 hours to speak to Whitfield and to inform my party. However, before I could do so, just 3 hours later, Whitfield received a letter informing him of his removal. The apparent reason for this sudden and ill-considered decision is that Whitfield did not obtain permission to travel abroad earlier this year.
Honourable Minister Steenhuisen, will you take your seat, please? There's a point of order. Order, honourable members. Honourable members.
Chair, I rise on Rule 68. The last time I checked, we were debating the
Order.
Division of Revenue Bill. The Speaker, with respect, is irrelevant to the topic of today. Thank you.
Yes. Honourable Minister Steenhuisen, will you get back to the topic under discussion, please?
This is now a moment of truth. Within the next 48 hours, we will find out if the DA stands alone as the only party that can be trusted to govern responsibly and take South Africa forward. Thank you very much.
Parliament can be so rambunctious, but the energy is good. It gets the people going. She said, "Yeah, can we get married at the mall?" I said, "Listen, you need to crawl before you ball." What does it mean? No one knows. It gets the people going. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just doing rap references every now and again. But Parliament can be rambunctious. It gets the people going. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing for party leaders and the ministers to know that the public will be tuning in, that Parliament is actually interesting, not just because of protests, not just because of disruption, but because of substantive contributions that people will be making. So some of the rambunctious disruptions were warranted because John Steenhuisen actually was a little bit out of order there. He was using the platform of the Division of Revenue vote in Parliament to get maximum attention for the removal of his minister, the deputy minister, but it wasn't relevant actually to the Division of Revenue vote, except for him to say at the end, "Well, we are behaving. We won't use this to disrupt the vote. We are going to be professional." Outside of that, a lot of that was not relevant. He used the platform, I think good strategy, good tactics, use the biggest platform that you can access, use the attention that is going to naturally be flowing as a result of people's interest in the Division of Revenue because of some of the drama that played out earlier, and then make your pronouncement. So the DA has given an ultimatum that the president should fire Thembisi Melane, you should fire Nobuhle Nkabane, fire David Mahlobo and other ANC ministers, deputy ministers that have been implicated in corruption within the next 48 hours. Is the president going to do that? Is he going to heed this request? I don't think so. They say that if the president fails to do so, the ANC will inflict grave consequences on South Africa. They say, make no mistake about it, what happens next is squarely, entirely on the ANC and President Ramaphosa. Well, an ultimatum is always risky, whether it's a Netflix show or it's real life. Once you issue such a threat, you have to match that with the requisite energy. You have to stand on 10 toes, as the YNs say in the streets. You have to stand on 10 toes. You have to match your threat with your actions, because if you do nothing, you lose credibility, you weaken your future negotiation standing capacity, you lose face, and you lose your standing with the public. So it's a serious thing. It's a serious move to make, especially if there's not going to be any action which matches that particular ultimatum. So this posture that the DA has taken is also interesting because they're not actually calling for their deputy minister to be reinstated. They're not doing that. They actually, in doing so, concede the point of misconduct. They concede the point of insubordination. What they're doing here by calling for the removal of other ministers is to say, well, our guy did something wrong, but you have other people who've done something wrong as well, remove them. So they actually concede the point. Andrew Whitfield himself conceded the point when he did an interview with Clement Manyathela, and he actually did acknowledge that he shouldn't have gone without getting explicit permission. Effectively, they blue-ticked his request, but a blue tick is not permission. If you send me a WhatsApp message asking to come to a braai or some social event that I'm organizing and I don't respond to you, you can't rock up on the Sunday. You cannot rock up. You didn't get the explicit and express permission from me to show up to that event. You are not invited, right? So it's not explicit. It's not confrontational, saying don't go for these reasons, because potentially if the president had issued such a letter, it could have leaked to the media. That would have been its own talking point. And perhaps that's what they wanted to begin with, this kind of a talking point where the president actually says you can't go for these reasons. So he was blue ticked, but he still went. And in so doing, he did undermine the authority of his principle. When you're a deputy minister, when you're a minister, you serve the president. You have to execute his interest, not the interest of your party, his interest, because you are on his time, his dime, right? He's been elected president. Parliament has said that he's the guy who's going to do the job because they're the ones who choose who the president is going to be. So you participated in that vote as the DA. You voted for him, meaning democratically you agreed to be under his leadership. So you cannot undermine him, undermine his interests. I think that much is clear and should be clear. And I think that the DA understands this. And perhaps that's why they sent a deputy minister to that trip as opposed to an outright minister, because they could have been more confrontational if they had sent an outright minister. So I think as things stand right now, the DA is actually on weaker ground than they would like. They've used up their leverage in the VAT matter and in the blocking of Budget 1 and Budget 2. And at this particular point, they couldn't vote against the division of revenue, even if they wanted to, because they would have been blamed by the markets. Firstly, your minister went in contravention of what is protocol to the White House to negotiate issues which are supposed to be negotiated by the Minister of International Relations, which are supposed to be negotiated by the ambassador, which are supposed to be negotiated by the president. A deputy minister isn't even a member of cabinet. So in what capacity, in what authority would he be in America talking to the Americans about things that are playing out in South Africa? So I think they've used up their leverage. They've used up in this particular round, because there's always a budget in the coming year. They may be able to settle some scores next year, but they can't do anything right now. They can't threaten to leave the government of national unity, because they've said in the White House, they've said in South Africa, they've said on multiple platforms that they view themselves as the buffer preventing the doomsday scenario of the MK and the EFF being in coalition with the ANC. They're the ones preventing South Africa from turning into Zimbabwe by being in a coalition with the ANC. That's what they've said. That's their narrative, right? But they also appreciate that the ANC has now got a plan B. And we saw that in budget too, right? If they were to leave the GNU right now, the ANC has an option of doing a coalition deal with Action SA and Build One South Africa. They'll get the votes with that kind of a move. Freedom Fund Plus can go, DA can go. They can still get their 201 votes, and they may then lose their cabinet positions, which I don't think the DA wants to do at this particular point. They still want to maintain being in cabinet and the benefits that accrue from being in cabinet without necessarily, losing GNU status, even though they are unhappy with some of the things that the ANC is doing. So at this point, DA has limited leverage, right? And we have to be aware that the ANC and the president view the DA right now with a lot of chagrin, anger, and they view them as having acted in ways that are contrary to the unity in the government of national unity side of things, right? So the DA has opposed the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act. The DA has opposed the Expropriation Act. They've opposed the National Health Insurance Act. They oppose the Transformation Fund. And in effect, they have been working at loggerheads with the ANC while being in cabinet with the ANC under one leadership of President Ramaphosa. So there's been some irritation, some annoyance, and some members of the ANC already saying, why are these people being kept in the coalition? Obviously, the markets and the donors prefer the DA in the coalition over everybody else. And we saw that when the coalition was being negotiated. This trip, as I've said, was a very provocative trip. It was a potentially damaging trip. It was a trip that was undermining the authority of the president and his Minister of International Relations. Let's be clear. The United States has taken decisions under Trump which have hurt the South African economy, made funding more difficult, and more decisions may be taken later which actually exacerbate the consequences, negative consequences of to the economy rather. The cutting of US aid has led to universities losing funding. It has led to loss of funding for ARV treatments, and potentially people are going to die as a result of the actions that were taken by Elon Musk, by AfriForum, by Peter Thiel, and whoever else was influencing the Trump administration to take this kind of harsh action against South Africa, right? That's the reality. So for the DA to be part of all of that is something that I think was always on the radar of the president, but he couldn't make a move. He couldn't make a move earlier because perhaps the constraints on him, the budget, all of that stuff that was still coming up, there was a trip to the White House at a later stage. So at various points where he could have taken action, he was constrained in taking action. And this may have been viewed by him as the appropriate time to take action. The fiscal framework is adopted, division of revenues adopted, so the DA has less leverage from a budget perspective. Then he's like, okay, now we have to settle the score of what the DA did, which was potentially damaging, undermining to me as I'm trying to prepare to go to America, as I'm trying to send envoys to negotiate with the Americans about how we're going to do a visit between myself and Trump. There you are sending your ministers, deputy ministers to the same place I'm trying to go to. And, you could be undercutting me, could be bad-mouthing me. I don't know what you're doing. So I think we have to be aware of how this looked from the ANC perspective. Having said all of that about the ANC's perspective, I think the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, they are right about one thing. And here's what I think they're right about. And I want to give them full credit for this argument because it's compelling. The argument is compelling. I agree with them. The removal of the Democratic Alliance deputy minister. While there are several ministers who have been implicated in corruption, who have faced criminal allegations from the media, and some of them even have dockets which are sitting somewhere. That is hypocritical. It's not consistent with the principle of good leadership. You can't just say you want subordination, good behavior, but you're accommodating of corruption allegations within cabinet. That is something that I think the DA is correct on. And they are correct to say those ministers should have been removed if indeed these allegations are so egregious and troubling that these people should not be in positions of power while those allegations are being processed. These skeletons right here are no longer Smolanyana skeletons, right? These are not smolanyana skeletons right now that we're dealing with. This is a whole cemetery full of skeletons lying around. Let's look at some of the issues that pertain to ministers within the cabinet. Thembisi Melane was moved from the Ministry of Justice for the allegations around her connected to her time as mayor of Polokwane and VBS. Right? She allegedly got large amounts of money from a VBS middleman for moving the funds of the municipality into VBS. And she's faced other allegations as well. They've been reported on by News 24. Khumbudzo Ntshavheni was referred by a judge in Limpopo to the NPA for criminal prosecution for her conduct as a municipal manager in Palawabora, where she approved a tender for an accounting company when she was a municipal manager, but that company did not submit a bid. And the judge, when he was going over the whole thing, said, but who was managing this thing? There have to be consequences because this right here is corruption. The judge was scathing. And he said, I'm going to take this matter to the NPA myself. And he did. Right? So she faces those allegations. Right? She faces those allegations. The Minister of Bubblegum. Encyclopedia. Ask Google. It doesn't work. The song doesn't work. So the Minister of Bubblegum, Encyclopedia, and Ask Google has been implicated in the dodgy appointments of Gwere Mantashe's son to set a board chairpersonship, other people as well, and in the cover-up. So not only did she do the appointments, she did the cover-up of those appointments by saying, no, there was an independent panel that advised me. Then she named people in the independent panel. Then one of the people, Advocate Terumtao, said, "Woo, girl, don't mention me in your things. Ask Encyclopedia if I was actually put on this thing. Ask Google's." Terumtao said, I take a dim view on your mentioning of my name. And then now she had to issue an apology to him, saying, sorry for the mix-up. I don't know what was going on. Yo, it's a lot. Do you know that there was a report this week saying that the presidency has advised the minister to stop talking to the media because she's incriminating herself with every interview? I'm sorry, there's something absurd about that in and of itself, right? Rather than actually promoting responsiveness, transparency, and ethical conduct, the reporting is that they told it, look, Chief, just what can I say? You know, Tupac Shakur once said in 1996 that South Africa is a movie. So, Park, you were right, my man. South Africa is a movie. You never know what's going to happen from 1 week to the next. So, Minister of Bubblegum, Nobutle Nkabane, she made the dodgy appointment. She then tried to lie to the committee, and there are still consequences facing her. So the Democratic Alliance is justified to say, look, okay, our guy went to the White House. He went to, Washington, D.C. Sure. Okay. Remove the other guys as well. Because if you're saying that you care so much about optics, good governance, good conduct, why are you not removing your guys? They're fair to say that. They're fair to say that. But going further, I think we must ask whether this was just an issue of insubordination. It may very well have been, but we have to consider other elements for completeness. There are ethical issues which have been raised about the Parkstar awarding of the lotto license to ANC-connected business people such as Moses Tembe. It's a massive contract, over 180 billion. It's a large amount of money. Then there are other issues around the appointments of Ramaphosa-connected ANC members to the board of the IDC, the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa. And we got this announcement also from Cabinet recently. This is what was said. These are the announcements.
Cabinet also approved the appointment of members of the Industrial Development Corporation Board, who are Dr. Gloria Tomato Sirobe as the chair, Mr. Ron Barnard, Mr. Sam Bembe, Ms. Tanya Rieva Cohen, Ms. Ayanda Dlodlo, Dr. Nomusa Dube Ngube, Dr. Kitumesi Mutibedi, and Dr. Sidney Mufamadi.
Dr. Nomsa Dube Ngube For example, she's part of the Ramaphosa camp in KZN, former premier of KZN 2022-2024, right? She's the same person who Nobutle, the Minister of Bubblegum, Encyclopedia, Ask Google, Laho. She's the same person who they tried to appoint as one of the SITA board. I don't know why they love her so much. They're always trying to appoint this lady somewhere. Why you guys love her so much? What's going on with the Nobutle? And not Nobutle, with the Dr. Nomsa Dube Ngube. What's going on there? Can we be clarified? So she's one of the people who was appointed now to the IDC. Ayanda Dlodlo, former Minister of State Security. She was in that position during the 2021 riots. Remember those riots? Then she was moved to Public Service and Administration. And then in 2022, she lost her cabinet position. So she's been appointed to the IDC. Sidi Mufamadi, he is one of the closest people to President Ramaphosa and has been given various serious responsibilities by him. There's also that thread that connects them from the mining sector. Mr. Mufamadi is involved in platinum mining in Zimbabwe with Zimplats, and there is a mine there which is owned by Sibanye Stillwater in Zimbabwe. And they're the ones, Sibanye Stillwater, who bought the Lonmin Mining Company in 2019. And if you recall, Lonmin is the owner of the mines where Mr. Ramaphosa was heavily involved, Marikana mine, that mine. Remember that, all of that? So Sidi Mufamadi being placed in IDC, it's very possible that these are issues which were being objected to or raised by Andrew Whitfield while he was in the deputy ministerial position. Then there's the issue of the 100 billion Transformation Fund. Transformation Fund is a strategic 100 billion rand initiative led by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition to advance Black economic empowerment by increasing the participation of majority Black-owned businesses in the mainstream economy. That's what it says on the paperwork, right? And you've been hearing a lot about BEE and criticisms of the BEE, etc. You know, the aims of the Transformation Fund are to provide both financial support and non-financial support, technical assistance, training, market access to Black entrepreneurs, especially in the underserved townships and rural areas. All of this is good on paper. I've spoken at length about how the South African economy is concentrated, how we have oligarchs like Rupert, we've got all of these billionaires who control the politics of South Africa as well as the economy of South Africa. I've spoken about that, but we have to be aware of something and we have to be honest. In as much as the market is concentrated and in as much as the paperwork is what it is, there are serious concerns about such a large amount of money being dispersed by the political party currently running the government, the ANC. There are concerns, legitimate concerns, that this money will benefit the Hoshkari economy and contribute to Hoshkari behavior, HKB. HKB levels are at an all-time high. In fact, Stats South Africa needs to give us an indicator of Hoshkari behavior so that we know what is the Hoshkari behavior rate at a given time. Is Hoshkari behavior growing at what pace? We already know that when there are tenders and there are allocations, disbursements of funds, and there are politicians involved, that money will go to the yellow bones with the yellow thighs. It will end up in Konka, in Live, in all of these establishments. Zanzu, I don't even know these establishments. Some of them don't even exist. We know that it will go to Hoshkari mamas and Hoshkari fathers. We've seen Hoshkari behavior. We've seen it. And it's legitimate for these concerns to be raised because even when the COVID-19 loans were being taken from the World Bank, etc., we're told, no, this money, hey, don't worry, this money will be ethically spent. Not this time. Not under our watch. Jiggy Hamilton is buying 7 cars. We're seeing all manner of mess, even under the New Dawn, which is old Vaseline. Right? Because it was supposed to be New Dawn, but it's an old Vaseline. I got some Vaseline here. This Vaseline is newer than the New Dawn. The New Dawn is older than this Vaseline that I got here. You need this when you're doing videos and stuff. So why my forehead sometimes is shiny, right? So the DA has been opposed to this fund, which was announced by Parkstow, and it may very well be that there's a breakdown in the working relationship between the minister and the deputy minister, right? Because of the transformation fund, the IGC appointments, right? The DA already has said that they oppose this transformation fund for several reasons. They said it's a continuation of BEE policies which have failed in their view to bring disadvantaged South Africans into the mainstream of the economy, have left 8 million people unemployed while enriching a small elite. They've said that it's a failure to address barriers to foreign investment which are inherent in triple BEE and other heavy-handed government policies. They want Starlink. They want other companies to be able to come in fast. Right? I mean, we must be aware. Amazon came in under these laws and they're operating, even Temu is operating. There's a variety of international businesses that have come into South Africa. So the argument in and of itself is not fully true, but the DA has made that argument and they do oppose, as you know, triple BEE. It was part of their campaign manifesto. So this could have been part of the breakdown in relationships. This could have been part of the breakdown in relationship. And Paktau could have just gone to Cyril Ramaphosa and said, listen, guy, I can't work with this guy anymore. Futhi, this guy also went to Washington without permission. Remove him. And that could have happened, right? Because that Department of Trade and Industry is quite important. It's one of the most busy departments. They have committee meetings almost every day because they're dealing with the economy and matters of the economy, right? So maybe the lottery issue and other issues then led to people saying, the DA is too close to the heat here. It will end up being collapsed by these guys, right? So that could have been a factor. And the fact that this is the first minister to fall, a DA minister, while there are allegations in the public domain, I think that in and of itself is somewhat of an indictment on President Ramaphosa himself. I think so. And I think there has to be some consideration about how this looks to the markets, to investors, to voters. Because you've got all of these ministers chewing gum, saying ask encyclopedia, etc., for serious allegations and questions that they're facing. And then you remove this guy for his trip to Washington, D.C., whose impacts are debatable at best, although it is clearly insubordination, right? So the DA, after 48 hours, what are they going to do? Are they going to leave the GNU? Nope, I don't think they're going to leave. But they could legally explore reviewing the decision. But I don't think they'll review this decision because it was rational, there's a clear explanation, and the courts will not give them any joy as a result of this. But there's something else that they could do legally, which they may explore. They could explore reviewing the failure of the president to act on the ministers in his cabinet who have been implicated in these serious allegations. And then he'll have to explain and provide reasons why he's refusing to remove them. And that in and of itself could be a legal action that will be reputationally damaging to the ANC and the president at a critical time when we're going to another election next year. And already there are concerns in local government around the behavior and the performance of the ANC in places like Johannesburg. So those are the options that the Democratic Alliance could pursue. But there's something I want to put to you. I have a theory. Could there be a cabinet reshuffle? It's been refuted by the president's spokesperson, Vincent Makwenya, but I have a theory that there may be. This theory may amount to nothing, but I thought I should present it to you. Maybe I will become the next Prophet Bushiri, and Floyd Shivambu will come to my church now that his prophet is a fugitive from the law. Can I go deeper? Can I go deeper? Can I go deeper, Papa? Let me go deeper with my theory. I mean, it may amount to nothing, but hear me out. If Cyril Ramaphosa wanted to reshuffle the cabinet and remove some of the ministers who we've discussed who have been implicated in wrongdoing through media allegations, right, and others through allegations that have made it to dockets, he would be in trouble with the ANC if he did not seem to be taking action against the DA. Right? Because there's several people in the ANC who voiced concerns about the DA, about the DA's presence in the coalition, about the DA undermining them on legislation. So to take action against the ANC only or the ANC first would be considered by some in the party as a betrayal and could weaken the strength of the people within his faction who are contesting for future leadership of the party in 2027. And he would be concerned. You may be asking, why does he care about 2027? He's already president. Wada. He's won. He's done. One and done. But the thing is, you do care about the landing of the plane as a president, right? Because the next administration can unravel the effects of your current... Look at what happened in Botswana, right? Between Kama and Masisi, right? So you can have a situation, and even in Angola, right, the Dos Santos family, the next administration really came hard for them and undermined. People were getting arrested. Isabella Dos Santos had to flee the country, all of that. So you can be concerned as a president who's reaching the end of his term about the state of the party, who takes over the party, who takes over the administration, right? So he would be concerned about managing relationships in the ANC and retaining the popularity of his camp and his side, because there are people within the party who are not fans of everything that has been happening, right? So just taking action against ANC people could be bad politics for him in the ANC. But removing a DA minister first may be helpful to him within the ANC, because then it's not just about targeting ANC people, etc. It's also just about, no, that's good leadership. He had to take an action. So this action could be a precursor. My theory, my Bushiri theory, it could be nothing. It could be a precursor and a buffer to the future action of the reshuffling of the cabinet and the removal, perhaps, of some of these ministers, Nobutle Nkabane, Thembisi Belane, and others, right? So we have to be aware that a cabinet reshuffle could happen at some point, because the ANC is not looking good in terms of performance at the national level. Unemployment is high, cost of living is high, crime is high, inflation has gone down, but food inflation is high, electricity costs are high, people are struggling, the cost of energy, that's gone through the roofs, people are struggling to just make it month to month. Right? And the Democratic Alliance right now, they're coasting within the cabinet. Their ministers are being given credit for a variety of things. They are given credit for stopping the VAT increase, not once, but twice. There was a decision, remember, that was taken by the ANC Minister of Finance. People were calling for his resignation or his firing. So the ANC is not looking good necessarily at the cabinet level. Dear ministers are being considered in a good light. Leon Schreiber is always getting good compliments, lots of positive reviews. And if Solly Malatsi can deliver on the issue of Starlink, the DA stock is going to go up in a variety of places, and it will be a big victory that will be claimed by DA in that respect, right? The minister, if you have forgotten, issued a directive that ICASA consider the equity alternatives, right? Equity equivalents, rather than the 30% local ownership for Starlink, to give Starlink a license to operate in South Africa. Today is the 27th of June. The comments were closed on Monday, the 23rd of June. I've got an episode on that other events keep pushing back my episode, man, on Starlink. So look out for that episode, right? But what this means effectively is that at some point, Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC have to reshape the narrative. They have to restart. And the cabinet reshuffle gives you a chance to say, well, when mistakes were made, we've learned, we're refreshing things, we're rebooting things. You try to put some star players in some cabinet positions and hope that you get some momentum from that particular reshuffling. So that's a possibility in and of itself, right? And I think that's something that we have to be aware of. And that's why I'm submitting this theory to you, that this could be part of preparing the groundwork for a later cabinet reshuffle, where then they will say, listen, but we did remove a DA minister. What do you think about the removal of Henry Woodfield? What do you think about the threat, the DA ultimatum of 48 hours or else? Do you think they're going to leave the GNU? What actions do you think they're going to take? Helen Zille said they've got a plan. They're cooking something in the kitchen. Umakoko is there with Ipoto, and she's out there. She's cooking a poiki of sorts. What do you think is going to happen? Let's have a conversation in the comment section. I'll catch you there.